Hey everybody, what's up? Jordan Tremaine here with another book review, and today we're going to talk about this red guy right here, which is The Intelligent Investor by none other than Benjamin Graham. Okay, so before we get into this book, little teensy bit of history, for me at least. This book, The Intelligent Investor, is about investing. It's by Benjamin Graham, and I think I've done some other stuff that's like more of investing, a little bit of real estate stuff. And so I've been getting more into that, so I decided that I was gonna like be serious and learn about investing. Everybody says it's confusing or it's gambling. Some people make a lot of money, some people lose a lot of money. I had this idea like maybe there's a method to the madness and you can actually learn something and this could be something you can improve in. I think this is important to me because I have a retirement account and I would like to retire at some point. So I want to get into this point where I'm investing at least enough to so I can stop working when I'm too old to work. So in light of that, I actually found this book, which is also by Benjamin Graham, same guy that wrote this, but Mr. Dodd helped with this book. This book's a lot thicker, and this is a serious textbook on investing. I'm bringing this up because I got pretty gung-ho and I was like, I'm gonna read this book. And I don't know if it's still in here, but this even came with a CD because this is like an abridged version of the textbook, and a lot of the extra chapters they just made into a PDF. So this book is really like this thick, but those extra chapters are on a PDF. So this is a lot of information, and it was written in like published in like the 1930s, and it's about this idea called value investing. But this like a lot of the nuts and bolts, examples, terms, all this kind of stuff like you would expect in a textbook. And this was actually very difficult for me, and I was struggling through it. I got to like, so far I'm on chapter 15, that's where the bookmark is. But I started with this book and it was really exhausting to read. I was having to look up all these terms and like do a research paper on every chapter to try and figure out what was going on. And I started understanding like why people think investing is so like, it makes no sense, or it's just gambling. You can't find, because there's just so much going on. There's history, the laws change, different stock markets, like stocks and bonds and all the different types of investment vehicles, and they work differently sometimes in different countries, and sometimes there's special rules for certain ones, and people could mislabel things, and it's this whole thing. And I was trying to get up to speed by reading this book, and it was very difficult. But I learned while reading this book that the same dude, Benjamin Graham, wrote a much easier kind of introduction book that's less about hardcore investing and more about the ideas behind investing and the psychology that goes into investing. And a lot of people were recommending to read this book first when I was looking online. And so I put this book down, which I will eventually get to, and I started reading this book. And so we're gonna get into it. So Benjamin Graham's The Intelligent Investor is still a pretty thick book. It's like 500-600 pages, and I still had to pause. I still had to look up some terms. Not everything was super straightforward, but I think that Graham was doing a good job of explaining something that's not straightforward. I don't think it was his fault as an explainer. I think it was the content is, I don't know, verbose, obtuse, cryptic, whatever you want to say, not easy to engage with. And one of the things that was interesting about this particular version of The Intelligent Investor is that each chapter was written by Graham, but then there was commentary by more modern people, because one of the interesting things about looking at Graham's idea of investing, which is value investing, which is basically not gambling on the price of a stock because it's going up or down. It's about evaluating the company behind the stock and seeing if the price of the stock is a good price as if you were buying the company privately. And how to do that, how to know how much a company is worth, how to control your emotions while the public is influencing the price of something that maybe you want to purchase or already have purchased. he's trying to go along these lines. But this book was published when he was alive, which was like 1930s, 1940s. And so what's interesting is there's commentaries to each chapter that was written more in the future, like in the 1970s. And it gives you like different perspective, because the security analysis or security industry, a security is another word for like stock. So we're just talking about investment. So right now I'm going to use a bunch of words like stocks, bonds, funds, ETFs, index funds, S&P 500, blah, 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 buzzwords. But like investment stuff. And so when this book was originally written, all the investment stuff was different, because the times were different, the companies were different, the laws were different. Laws progress as time moves on, new types of investment vehicles come out, and the game changes, the rules change as time moves on. So one of the interesting things I thought about this book was the original wisdom from Graham was set out in each chapter, but then directly following that, there was a bit of commentary about more updated, more recent additions to maybe this advice, because laws have changed, different companies are no longer at play, the way the market works has changed because of XYZ factors. And not all of it I thought was super logical. I think you have to read things and decide for yourself, but I thought it was good perspective and it was good stuff to think about, so I'm glad those commentaries were in there. But this book, I thought, was actually, even though it's 500-600 pages, it's a little bit dense, it's such a good intro to investing, because investing is kind of like this black box. Like, people like throw money into their 401k. They really don't know what they're investing in. Like, your company would be like, oh, you got a 401k, here's 3 options. You could invest in growth, you could invest in safety, or you could invest in aggressive. And you'd like, oh, I want this one. But like, nobody looks at the companies behind that. Nobody looks at the fees they have to pay, all this kind of stuff. And then they get like 30, 40 years later, oh my gosh, I maybe I won't have enough money for retirement. It's like, well, maybe you could have looked into the money that you were putting away and where you were putting it. But I realized that could be very overwhelming very quickly. There's all these graphs with numbers and words that don't make sense. There's all these people trying to get you to put money over here and there. You watch like Fox or CNBC or whatever the TV channel it is today, and they're like, put your money here. No, put your money there. This is going up. Oh, these people made a bad investment. You got to do oil, now gold, now Bitcoin, now art. And it gets like really crazy. And what I really appreciated about this book, this red book, The Intelligent Investor, is Graham, I think, from my perspective, obviously has technical chops. In this book, Security Analysis, his black book, he was going hard. And you're just like, whoa, this is a lot of information. And this book still has a lot of information, but it's way more beginner. And I think the greatest thing about this book is that it focuses on like, you're a beginner, don't treat yourself like an expert. Don't think you could beat the system. And like, if you just started playing tennis, don't think that next week you could win Wimbledon. If you just started running track, don't think you can get a gold medal in the Olympics next year. Like, start at a reasonable place, get some experience, and then after you have some experience, if you decide that you want to kick it up a notch, then slowly do that deliberately with information. Don't just go ham and just start buying all these stocks that you don't know anything about and then getting all emotional and making these bad decisions based on what the market is doing. This book doesn't really go too in depth about super specific examples and how to read tables and like predict the future and all that kind of stuff. This book is actually a psychology book, which I didn't expect. But it talks a lot about how the mind works, because the stock market is a lot of people buying shares of companies. I think a lot of people can get that. In GE, I did that book review on Lights Out, The Rise and Fall of GE. When GE became publicly traded, they sold shares of GE. And everybody that bought shares of GE was a partial owner of GE based on how many shares they had. And the price of those shares went up and down in the stock market. And so those shares themselves became a commodity. And a lot of times people get really focused on that share price and they don't really know what's going on behind the company, which if you go to that book review on Lights Out, it kind of starts explaining like not every company is what they say they are. Not the share price doesn't always reflect the real value behind the company. Enron was an infamous case of this. And this book, in terms of psychology, kind of takes a step back from trying to figure out how the game works and realize that the game is played by a lot of people. And if investing is really hard to think about, like, oh man, this is really complicated, and a bunch of regular people are playing this game, a bunch of regular people are investing in stocks, and when every time somebody like buys a share, it makes that share more popular, like supply and demand. If I buy a share, I'm demanding it, and the supply is going down because I just bought one. So the price is going to go up. So the more people that buy something, the more the price is going to go up, which actually doesn't have to have anything to do with the actual value behind that thing. It could just be it got popular, maybe, I don't know, J.K. Rowling or Trump or something said something about this stock and now everybody wants it when really that company is terrible or something like that. And it's this kind of gauge of how the larger psychology of the society works, because all these people are just making decisions and a lot of them don't really know what they're doing. So be careful. And I think this book does a good job of kind of managing expectations and kind of showing you at a high level what the game looks like, because stocks is, to me, it's a game. And you can do a lot better in a game if you know the rules and you have some experience. And if you don't, like there's all these examples in like TV shows of these things, these guys called pool sharks, where they like people play pool or billiards and they pretend that they're not that good, and then you play with them, and then they're like, oh, you want to play a game? I'll bet you $500. And they're like, oh, he's not that good, I'll play him. And then like turns out this guy's a professional trick pool player and he like just takes your money. And stocks can seem like that. It can seem like a casino where like the odds are stacked against you and there are people out there trying to take your money, which is true to some point. But knowing about this gives you a lot more ability to deal with it. And I liked this book because even though it was pretty boring, I know on more than one occasion, probably like 50 occasions, this took me like 3, 4, 5 months to read, I had to force myself to get back to this book because it was confusing a little bit. But I think it's super worth it, because for most Americans, your 401k, your retirement plan, your investment portfolio is literally the thing that you're resting your life on when you retire. When you stop working, you're trusting that that's going to work. And I think a couple of months of struggling through a book like this, if this is the difference between you living in your car and you having your house still when you're 60, read this book. Not to say this book has all the answers, but it's like a super good start that helps set expectations and starts getting you an idea of what to look for. And so I highly recommend this book. Interestingly, while reading this book, I learned that Graham wrote another book. So there's 3 books. I've read this book. I'm on chapter 15 of this book, but I think I'm going to restart it because it was super confusing when I was starting to read this and then I jumped on this. I think I'm going to restart this. But I found out that he also wrote this book, which is much thinner, so I'm happy about that. But this book is called The Interpretation of Financial Statements. So basically, in this idea that Graham has, which is called value investing, you're not too concerned about the stock market price, about how it's going up and how it's going down. What you are concerned about is every stock or every bond or every investment vehicle is backed by a company. You buy a stock, you're buying a share in a company. And so rather than worrying about what everybody is paying for the stock, Graham says, look at the company that's behind the stock. Figure out how much that company is worth. And if that company is worth $100 and they're selling 10 shares total, then the shares should be around $10 each, because 10 times 10 is 100. And if the shares are $500 each, that's too expensive. That's really risky because the whole company's only worth $100. So why would you have 5 shares for $500? That's 10 shares for $500. That's $5,000. That's way too expensive for how much the company is actually worth. But if you did your due diligence, you looked at the company and all that kind of stuff, and the shares were $7 each, and you were like, hey, actually, if I bought all the shares, it would only cost me $70, and I think the company is worth $100. That's a bargain. I should buy that. And that's what this whole idea of value investing is. It's like, look at the actual value of the company. What real estate does it own? What business products does it have? What inventory does it have? What market share does it? Like, what are the actual things that are valuable about that company? And if you believe that the price of the stock is justified by the actual value of the company, buy that stock. And this red book talks about kind of the psychology and the emotional intelligence and stability that it takes to do that, and a little bit of an intro in how to start looking at that and some of the terms and all that, whatever. This book, so we got psychology here, and then this book is apparently, I haven't read it yet, but I do plan on reading this, is about the interpretation of financial statements. Financial statements are kind of like the things that publicly traded companies, every company that sells stocks is publicly traded. And so every publicly traded company has to release financial statements. They're like quarterly reports, annual reports, that kind of thing, prospectuses. And this is like how to read that. So here we're saying like, you should focus on the value of the company behind the stock. And this is like, well, how do you find that value? You read the financial statements. And this is how to read those statements, I think. And so this is kind of okay, go to page 3, and page 3 is going to tell you the EBITDA, or it's going to tell you the price per earnings. This is what price per earnings means, blah, 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 blah. And it helps you kind of like map out how to estimate value. At the end of the day, it's up to you, and you have to choose what you think is valuable and what's not valuable and make like a good estimate yourself. But I think this is going to be a really good start. And so I think this is super cool, that this to me is kind of a progression. It's like a trilogy where you start here, you get your mind right. This is kind of some of the psychology of investing. Teach yourself how to calm down and be zen and not get controlled by what other people are doing. Don't get excited by the market and like sell and buy just because that's what everybody else is doing. And so once you get your head together and you get a little bit of introduction, then you move here and you learn how to actually read financial statements. So now I have a calm mind, and I'm going to actually start getting realistic data. I'm going to actually start learning how to evaluate companies and practicing to do that. And this is my guide for that. That's like, book number 2. And then book number 3 is like, if you were able to do this and get your mind right and then start actually looking at companies and doing this evaluation stuff, and this is something you want to get into, then the black book, which to me is like the big, thick, complicated textbook, this is really how to do it. Here's a bunch more information, and now that you've had some practice looking at financial statements and all that kind of stuff, this should be more accessible to you, and you should be able to learn a lot and gain insights about how different investment vehicles work, how they work together, because a single company could offer multiple types of investment vehicles. They could sell like different types of stocks. You can sell like senior issues and junior issues. You can sell bonds, you can sell warrants, you can sell like all these different things, and they work together. And sometimes because a company is selling bonds and stocks, like if they're selling way too many bonds, maybe that makes their stocks less valuable. So you got to look at like this balance of all the different things. To me, it's kind of like a body. Like you have bones, you have muscles, you have blood, you have skin. And it's not about how good are those bones, it's about how good is the system, how good does everything work together. And I think this black book is more of like the really technical in-depth of like, here's all the different players and here's how they work together. So I think this is a cool thing that Graham did. I think this is so amazing that he took all this time to like put out this information. And this was done in like the 1930s, 40s, and this is still like a highly regarded set of books today. So there are some tried and true principles in the investing world, but there are new things that have come out because time, has evolved. New laws have come out, new types of investment vehicles come out, the internet has come out. So this isn't like super up to date with everything because it was written a long time ago. But there are certain principles, like human psychology largely did not change at all because humans are still basically human. How to read a financial statement probably didn't change. Like accounting, you take $1 out, you write down, I took $1 out. You put $1 in, you write down, I put $1 in, ideally. And the way you read that shouldn't change just because, we have computers instead of typewriters. Maybe the way you write it, but I don't know. And then here, like the historical value of how the stock market has worked in the past, different cycles that have happened. So a lot of times people get really caught up and anxious because they think something is only happening to them. Some of the stuff in these books give you history on how the stock market has worked in the past. And you can say like, oh, wait a second, something like this has happened before. So maybe I shouldn't be as worried as I think I am. Maybe this isn't a catastrophe. Maybe this is a normal cycle. So this book, which I actually read, I highly recommend to everyone, even though I do think this is a boring book. And yeah, if you're like super rich and you got like so much money you don't need to invest, or you directly invest, you bought your own business and that's what's making you cash flow or whatever, maybe not. But if you're investing in stocks or bonds or anything like that, and if you have a retirement account, you are doing this. So don't say like, oh, I don't know. If you have a 401k, you are doing this. Read this book. Try to read this book. And then get frustrated and put it down for a month and then pick it back up and get back to work and finish the book, because it's really good for your long-term financial health. Like, this could be the difference between you having to live with your kids when you're old and you being able to like do what you want when you're old and have enough money so that you can like buy food and stuff. So I highly recommend this book. I'm going to do book reviews on these probably later, maybe in a few years. It might take me a while to actually finish this book, but I plan on doing reviews on those later. But I'll put the links for all 3 books in the description. I think this is the first one, this is the second one, and that's the third one, like in order, if you're gonna read all 3 of them. But Intelligent Investor, the definitive book on value investing. That's finding the value in a company, not looking at how popular something is, actually going behind and looking at the numbers and saying, how valuable is this? It's exactly this valuable. Well, how much does it cost? Does that match up? Okay, good. Does that match up? No? Okay, bad. Don't buy it. So, yeah, this, cost $30? I think this was an incredibly good investment for me, and I hope it's a good investment for you. But yeah, this has been a very long book review by me because this was a very long book. I had a lot of stuff to say. I missed a lot of stuff because, these are all the tabs of like things I went back on to check notes and like references, because this gives you a lot of references to other books like this book. That's where I found out about this book. But it's hard to overstate in my mind how important this is if you are somebody that does invest or has a retirement account. So yeah, this has been Jordan Tremaine Book Reviews with another one. Today's is The Intelligent Investor, and I'll see you later.